What happens when telling the truth becomes the most dangerous thing you can do to your country? What happens when the very people sworn to protect America decide that protecting their political narrative is more important than protecting American lives? Hello there, welcome to yet another controversial chapter in American history with American Scandal Report. I'm your host, Oz Dalton, and today we're going to unravel one of the most scandalous sagas behind the CIA's tall walls. This is just one of the untold stories waiting on Skoob, your AI-powered podcast studio, with short, bingeable episodes packed with mystery, politics, and revelation. Download the Skoob app now on the App Store or Play Store. Today we're diving deep into one of the most shocking political scandals of the 21st century, a story that has everything: forged documents, CIA operatives, White House conspiracies, and a simple diplomatic mission that would ultimately expose the dark heart of how America was led into war. This is the story of the Plame Affair, and it's about to get wild. Let's start in February 2002. Picture this: a seasoned diplomat named Joseph Wilson gets a call that will change his life forever. The CIA wants him to take a little trip to Niger, a dusty nation in West Africa that most Americans couldn't find on a map. Why Niger? Because someone in the Bush administration, specifically Vice President Dick Cheney, wanted answers about some very serious allegations. Word was that Saddam Hussein's Iraq was trying to buy 500 tons of yellowcake uranium from Niger. If true, this could be the smoking gun proving Iraq was building nuclear weapons. Wilson wasn't just any diplomat. This guy had serious credentials. He'd served as ambassador to Gabon, had been posted in Niger's capital before, and during the Gulf War he was the senior American diplomat in Baghdad. When former presidents praised his work, they meant it. So off Wilson goes to Niger in February 2002, genuinely believing he's investigating legitimate intelligence. He spends 8 days there, talks to officials, examines the claims, and works with the US ambassador to Niger, Barbara Owens Kirkpatrick, who had already been raising red flags about these uranium stories. Wilson's conclusion? The whole thing was garbage, pure fiction. He found absolutely no evidence that Iraq had tried to buy uranium from Niger. In fact, the logistics alone made it nearly impossible. He returns to the United States in early March 2002 and dutifully reports his findings to everyone who matters: the CIA, the State Department, the National Security Council, and yes, to Dick Cheney himself. Case closed, right? The uranium story is dead. Wilson has done his job, saved his country from acting on false intelligence, and everyone can move on. If only it were that simple. Here's where our story takes a dark turn. Despite Wilson's clear debunking of the uranium claims, something strange starts happening. In September 2002, 6 months after Wilson's report, British Prime Minister Tony Blair publicly declares that Saddam Hussein has been trying to get uranium from Africa. Then in January 2003, President George W. Bush delivers his State of the Union address. And there it is, those infamous 16 words: intelligence suggesting Iraq sought uranium from Africa. Wilson is watching this, probably throwing things at his TV, thinking, "Are you kidding me? I literally proved this was false." But it gets worse. In March 2003, as American troops are already mobilizing for invasion, Vice President Dick Cheney, the same guy who sent Wilson to Niger in the first place, is out there still pushing the uranium narrative. Wilson is beyond frustrated. He's done his job, reported the truth, and yet the administration is still using the lie he'd exposed to justify going to war. It's like watching a car crash in slow motion, except the car is your entire country. By this point, even international experts are calling out the fraud. The International Atomic Energy Agency examines the documents supporting the uranium claims and declares them crude forgeries, not sophisticated deceptions. Crude forgeries that shouldn't have fooled anyone with basic intelligence training. But America invades Iraq anyway. And as the months pass and no weapons of mass destruction are found, Wilson realizes something chilling. Portions of the intelligence about Iraq's nuclear capabilities were being deliberately manipulated to exaggerate the threat. The question haunting Wilson becomes, if they're lying about this, what else are they lying about? By summer 2003, Wilson has had enough. The justification for war is crumbling, American soldiers are dying, an insurgency is growing, and the next election is just a year away. The Bush administration is feeling the heat, and they need someone to blame. Enter the scapegoat, CIA Director George Tenet. The White House starts pushing the narrative that the CIA screwed up, that they gave bad intelligence, and that Bush was just an innocent victim of CIA incompetence. They even draft a speech for Tenet to deliver, essentially throwing himself on his sword for the administration. But Wilson knows better. He knows the CIA actually got it right. He was their guy, and he'd proven the uranium story false. The intelligence wasn't bad, it was being ignored and manipulated for political purposes. So on July 6th, 2003, Wilson drops a bombshell. He publishes an op-ed in the New York Times with a devastating title that gets right to the point. In it, he details his mission to Niger and strongly suggests that the Bush administration knowingly misrepresented intelligence to justify war. The response is immediate. The White House reluctantly admits that the Niger uranium claim should never have been in the State of the Union address. Tenet releases a statement taking blame for the 16 words error, but Wilson has already lit the fuse on a much bigger explosion, because the White House isn't just going to take this lying down. They're about to show Wilson, and anyone else thinking of speaking truth to power, exactly what happens when you cross the Bush administration. On July 14th, 2003, right-wing columnist Robert Novak publishes a piece that changes everything. In it, he reveals that Wilson's wife, Valerie Plame, is an undercover CIA operative. Just like that, with a few printed words, Plame's career is over, her life is in danger, and her entire intelligence network is compromised. But this wasn't just collateral damage. This was the point. The message from the White House was crystal clear. If you talk, we'll take your family and drag them through the mud. Think about what this means. Valerie Plame wasn't just any CIA employee pushing papers in Langley. She was a covert operative working on counter-terrorism and weapons of mass destruction, the exact threats America was supposedly fighting. Her work involved intricate networks of foreign relationships and sources that took years to develop. By exposing her identity, the White House didn't just end her career. They potentially signed her death warrant. CIA station chiefs in places like Beirut and Greece have been assassinated. Al-Qaeda-allied terrorists would love to get their hands on someone so closely tied to counter-terrorism efforts. And here's the kicker. Exposing a covert operative's identity violates the 1982 Intelligence Identities Protection Act. We're talking about a federal crime punishable by hefty fines and up to 10 years in prison. But the White House calculated that destroying Wilson and Plame was worth the risk. They believed the fear they'd instill in other potential whistleblowers was more valuable than following the law. According to Wilson, in March 2003, right around the time he was quietly suggesting the administration should admit their uranium error, a meeting was called at the White House. Either Vice President Cheney or his Chief of Staff, Louis Scooter Libby, led this meeting with one purpose: to work up opposition against Joseph Wilson. By work up, Wilson meant something that should chill every American. The White House was conducting an intelligence operation against one of its own citizens. They were digging into Wilson's personal and public life, looking for anything they could use to destroy him. But the star of this conspiracy was Karl Rove, Bush's brain, the president's chief political advisor. Wilson believed Rove was the mastermind behind the leak, and by August 2003, he was publicly accusing Rove of being the source. How did Wilson know? He claimed to have obtained documents from a State Department Internal Security Unit investigation that exposed Rove's involvement. A close-knit group of supporters had provided Wilson with evidence that Rove had leaked Plame's identity as retaliation for Wilson's criticism of the administration. Later investigations would reveal that at least 2 senior White House figures had contacted 6 different Washington journalists, all in an effort to discredit Wilson and Plame. They painted Wilson as disloyal, a fabricator, someone whose only qualification for the Niger mission was nepotism through his CIA wife. The irony is staggering. The real fabricators were calling the truth-teller a liar. Here's what makes the Plame Affair so significant. It's not just about one diplomat and his CIA wife. It's a window into how the most powerful government on Earth was willing to manipulate intelligence and destroy American lives to maintain a false narrative about war. Wilson wasn't some partisan Democrat out to get Bush. He had actually contributed to Bush's 2000 campaign and served faithfully under the Bush administration. His Niger report could have saved the president from making false claims to the American people if only they had listened. Instead, the administration chose to prioritize political narrative over national security. They chose to betray one of their own intelligence officers rather than admit they were wrong about the justification for war. This scandal sits alongside some of the CIA's darkest moments in history. The 1970s brought us Philip Agee exposing CIA operatives. Watergate revealed former CIA operatives breaking into the Democratic National Committee. And the Family Jewels documents showed the agency spying on journalists, infiltrating student groups, plotting assassinations, and training oppressive regimes. But the Plame Affair was different. This wasn't the CIA going rogue. This was the White House using the CIA's own people as weapons against American citizens who dared to speak the truth. The administration gambled that they could intimidate Wilson and other potential whistleblowers into silence. They calculated that protecting their war narrative was more important than protecting their own intelligence assets. They were wrong on both counts. As we sit here today, the Plame Affair stands as one of the starkest examples of how power corrupts and how far some will go to protect their version of reality. Joseph Wilson did exactly what any patriotic American should do. He served his country faithfully, reported the truth, and when he saw that truth being ignored in service of a lie that was costing American lives, he spoke up. For this, he was called a traitor and a liar. Valerie Plame dedicated her career to protecting America from its most dangerous enemies. For having the misfortune of being married to a truth teller, her life's work was destroyed. Her safety was compromised and her networks were burned. The real tragedy isn't just what happened to Wilson and Plame. It's what their treatment says about the price of honesty in a system that values political survival over truth. 8 days. That's how long it took for the White House to destroy Joseph Wilson's life. So who was behind this? Wilson had his suspicions about the Bush administration. But did he do something about it? Did he launch an investigation? And what was Valerie's take on this? The story doesn't end here, and you don't have to either. Head on to the Skoob app to check out the full story behind the Plame Affair. Download the Skoob app now, your AI-powered podcast companion for deeper thinking in minutes. Download the app from the App Store or Play Store and keep exploring.